Today we do a multi-band makeover. Welcome to yet another ham radio video. This is JKQ4DUX. If you're new to the channel, love to do portable operations, parks on the air. I am a CW operator primarily, but we do some SSB as well. And today we are repurposing an antenna. This was my first antenna. It is the MFJ 2010. It is an off-center dipole for 40 through 6 meters. This antenna performs very well, and I've even deployed it in the field a couple of times. Really happy with the performance, but it's not so easy to deploy. So let's take a look at how it came and then the modifications I'm doing to make it a little more portable friendly. So this is the wire that it came with. Now this is bare wire. I'm not sure if it's copper clad or pure copper that's been braided, but this is excellent for its intended purpose. It's a very durable, very good performance. This would last years in typical setup in which this was designed for, which is a base station, a more permanent deployment. But being, as I said, wanting to use this in the field portable, I have gone and switched over to different wires. So this is the 18 gauge silicone insulated wire. And a couple of advantages is really going to make this a lot more friendly. Number one, look at how easy and how flexible that wire is, as of course to this stiff copper wire. That's going to make wrapping it up. So, I just did like a figure eight and put one of these ties on it here. And that was one major complaint, is trying to loop this wire. It has a memory, it's very stiff. It's just not made to be deployed and redeployed and taken up and down over and over again. And then the other thing is the weight factor. This is 18 gauge wire. It's a little thinner and it's much lighter wire. So that's also an advantage for portable deployment. So let's take a look. If you've got one like this or similar to it, here is the matching unit here, the 4-to-1. So when this came with from the factory, this I'll hold up is this was the original end. So this has been replaced obviously, but this came right on, and it was soldered to the original wire. Now you can go ahead and plug in your soldering iron or your gun or whatever, wait 5-10 minutes, get it hot enough, get that big old wire hot enough and pull it off. Or you could do what I did, and with these two items. Now you're going to have to be careful if you're using a torch. Obviously it's a lot more heat. You're going to want to get the wire a good way away from the plastic. You're not going to be wanting putting the flame towards the plastic. But when I had it, the connector was sticking out like this, about that far away. I had a lineman's pliers, held on to it, put the torch up there, and in just a matter of a couple of seconds it came loose and I got that off. From there I measured the lengths of the wire, and the fence makes a very good place to do this because I'm down the fence now closer to where I'm going to lift it up. But in my yard, this fence is probably, I want to say, maybe 80-90 feet long. But what I did was I took a clamp, I clamped the 4-to-1 right here, and then I stretched the wire along the top of this and above the top of those posts. So I was able to stretch that wire all the way to the end. So rather than using a tape measure, and I've only got a 25 footer, I stretched it tight until I was where I was at. And I added a little bit of length, and from all of the research I've done, the insulated wire is probably going to end up being a little shorter than the bare wire. So I should be plenty safe here. And let's just take a look at the other end. So this would be the far end. So I have looped it through with the hose that were already there, and I've left this off, and now we can trim this back and adjust this however we need to once we get it up in the air. All right, well, as you can see, I've already got a line up through the branch. I'm not sure, this branch is probably close to 40 feet. This is a 100-foot rope, and there's nothing touching the ground, but part of that is because it went too far above the main branch and it hung up a little bit on some smaller branches. So that's another thing that you want to keep in mind, especially when tuning these. The deployment height can make a significant difference, and then the angle, if you're running it in an inverted V like I usually do, that can make a big difference. I've seen that if you run them all the way down close to the ground versus stretching them out a little flatter and getting them, you know, 10, 15 feet off the ground. So whenever you're doing testing like this, you know, you need to do something to take note of the deployment height, because you don't want to have this thing tuned at 40 feet up in the air and then get out to the park at 20 feet and it's just not tuning up very well. So I'll put the camera down, we'll hook up our coax, and we'll set it up and see what we can find out. Here's another quick tip when dealing with ropes, paracords, and whatnot. I've shared this on a different video, but of course when you cut it with a hot knife or burn it, whatever you can. But on top of that, I will use a piece of heat shrink, so you pass that through no problem. And sometimes the ends get frayed or whatnot, but that's just probably something you got laying around anyway. Makes life a whole lot easier. So I'm tying this paracord to the short end. I'll do the same to the long end, and that will give us some length to get something to tie to on each end. So this is exactly what I'm talking about here. As you can see, I did burn this, and that is still intact and holding the inner part together, but the outer sleeve has pulled back. So at this point, I've got the coax hanging down, and I've got the feed point up at some undetermined height. I don't really know, I'm just guessing when I said the branch was 40-ish feet. What I'm gonna do is place a piece of tape where the coax would touch the ground. So that will give me something to go by. It's a 50-foot. I can measure the short end and then come up with a very close estimate of the deployment height. Now you could use something like a zip tie, whatever you can use. The reason I didn't use the zip tie, number one, if you don't go very tight, I guess it's possible it could slide. Probably wouldn't slide much and throw you off that much, but that's possible. The other thing too, you probably wouldn't want to leave that on permanently, and trying to remove it, cutting it some way, you could potentially scratch or cut the shielding or part of the coax. So I went with tape. So let's take a look at our initial results. So I'm using the Stick 230, and I really like this. It will give you more information than your basic SWR meter, and it has some nice functions. For instance, the multi will sweep all the bands and show you where you're at on each band, and you could scroll through them one at a time. So initially, when I've tested this antenna before, I'm usually about 1.3, 1.4 on the 40 meter band. I'm close to perfect on the 20 meter band. I think yesterday we ran this, we're like 1.05 to 1. And then we are a little bit off. So I'm 1.74 on the 40 meter band, 1.72 on the 20 meter band, and on the 10 meter band 1.84. Now one nice feature here is that we can go to ham, and there are settings in here for depending on your location and what your band plan is. If you're not in the US, there's different ones, but right here we're seeing the lowest it's at is 1.54, and then it says where 6.9. So below the band is where it's the closest. So that would mean it's too long, which is what we expected, with being generous with the wire length, and also the changeover from the bare wire to the insulated wire. So I'm going to start trimming it back. My plan is to do about an inch at a time and see where we can get this thing to. Well, sometimes an unexpected problem could be a great learning opportunity. So on my first adjustment, I took off about an inch on each end. And thinking back, I maybe should have done one end at a time, because when you're changing things, you really only want to change one thing at a time so you know what happened. So my SWR went from a little bit high to significantly high. So what was 1.7-ish went up into 2 or 3 to 1. And so then what I did, I lowered it down again, and I just slid the wire in and out to see what would happen. And you know, sometimes we're 5 or 6 to 1. So something's going on here, but what is nice is, because I have this, and I may have to do some research to educate myself on all the information that this tells me. I don't necessarily know how to interpret that, but you know, as we learn, we learn new things. But for instance, if I go to the free, I can move that and see where the lowest frequency is. Or if I go to single, there's a whole lot more information. So your first page, you've got your basic SWR, return loss, and all that. And then you can scroll through and, you know, see things like reactance and other things like that. And I'm going to have to do a little checking. I'm going to do a little more experimenting with the antenna, but we'll see what we can figure out. What may have happened was when I cut my lengths, let's just say I was way too long on one of them, and then right at the short point of the other one, I may have removed more than necessary on one of them. So I will be back in a moment and we'll see what we got figured out. Well, I'm a couple hours older and a little bit wiser. I think the critical mistake I made was, being it is a dipole, I was thinking of a standard dipole that both legs are equal, so I took equal amounts off each end. But this is not a standard dipole, this is an off-center, so the amount I take off the long end, an inch there, is a lot different percentage than an inch on the short end. So this is my procedure of how I got it figured out. And again, I don't claim to be an expert, but I'm figuring this stuff out as I go. So I had to start working on one end at a time and seeing what would happen, and shortening and lengthening one end at a time. And when I think back to extensive use of a vertical, the radiating element versus the counterpoise or the radial, when I look at the point where it's the lowest or closest to resonance, what I want to change is the radiating element to get that length as good as I can. And then I use the length of the counterpoise of the radial to work on the SWR. So that's kind of my procedure. So I worked on, when using the meter, I found out I was too long because it was closest to resonance below the band. So I'm shortening the radiating side of things, if you want to look at it that way. So once I got that closer to where I want to be inside the band, and so maybe I went pretty close to that on that way, but the SWR is too high. So then I work on the other end to get the SWR down. So I did end up shortening both ends, and I got the SWR down first by shortening the shorter end, and then once I got that looking pretty decent, I was bottoming out at, like, for the 40 meter band was like 6.9, so just below the band was the lowest point. So then I started shortening the long end and got it up to where about as close as I can get, because I'm trying to get 40, 20, and 10. So let's just take a look. Hopefully y'all can see this. So 40 meters, 127 at right at the bottom of the band, 7.0. And we'll keep on moving through. So 20 looking great. Also at the very bottom of the band, but 1.09, doesn't get much better than that. And then 15, if you got a good tuner, that'll do a 3-to-1 or less. It could work that, or 12. And then 10 meters, my lowest point was 1.37 at 28.3 or 0.295, so almost at the bottom of the voice portion. So I'm pretty happy with that. And now again, I just want to stress the tape here. So now I'm maybe 1 to 2 feet above my original deployment height, but I went up and down on this thing many times during that process. So that's how important this is. So I'm not, you know, testing at 30 feet, then at 35, then at 28, then at 33. I'm consistent that way. And now that I've got tuned at this height, I'm gonna check it at a lower height. So maybe I get to a place and I can only get it up 25. I'm gonna need to know how that's gonna change things. So lastly, I tested the deployment height. I lowered it down to, I'm guessing, about 25 feet. So this scenario would be the lowest that I would probably attempt if the location didn't allow for anything higher. So I lowered it down and I left the ends in place so it was a little flatter, you know, maybe more like a 60 degree, or maybe even a little flatter than that at first. So that did bring the SWR up some, not a whole lot, still usable on all the bands. And then after that I tried lowering the ends back more of an angle towards like a 45, and I got the ends of the antenna lower. So in a case where there was no trees or anything to get the ends up higher in the air, that'd be a situation. So what that ended up doing was it robbed the top end of 40 meters. So I could probably go with CW and it'd be okay, but once we get up in the band, SWR was kind of getting out of range. And 20 meters still look great across the whole thing, so this thing should always perform on 20. And then 10 meters did improve a little bit, so that it moved our lowest point up, you know, well into the voice portion. So it maybe expanded 10. So the lowest deployment helped 10 and hurt 40. 20 still looking good. And then if I could get a tuner, I mean, I do have one, but it's not really the portable type, but something that'll tune 3-to-1, then I could work 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, probably 30. I think 30 was more like 3.5. and then 40 meters. So that would definitely be a big improvement. Been looking to get some type of multi-band antenna, you know, the POTA Performer, that style. It doesn't take that long to switch, but it's more than just a push of the button, obviously. I just wanted to avoid a tuner, hit the main bands, and get good performance. So we'll be trying this thing out again in the field and see with this new wire if it's a little faster and easier to deploy. Everybody likes the fix-it-up shows, the renovation, whether it's a makeover the ladies like to watch with somebody's wardrobe and makeup, or a fixer-upper house, or the guys like to watch the restoring old vehicles and stuff. We're repurposing, so I hope that you found that helpful. Maybe you've got something like this lying around and you're getting into portable ops and you spend all your money on a radio and don't really want to spend a lot on an antenna, so you can just take something that you have and make it a little more friendly for portable use. So thanks for watching today. You've watched yet another ham radio video. My name's Jay, KQ4DUX. Hope to see you on there soon. Bye bye.